I'm 61 years old now, and there are some memories that still don't sit right when I let myself think about them. This is one of those stories. I've carried it for most of my life, telling myself I was doing the right thing by staying quiet. But the older I get, the heavier it feels. Silence has a way of rotting things from the inside. What happened to me took place more than 35 years ago, in a stretch of land most people don't bother to name on a map. Back then, it was quiet country, wide skies, dry earth, and long shadows at sunset. The kind of place where sound travels far and people learn to listen more than they talk. I thought I understood that land. I was wrong. At the time, I was in my late 20s, working a job that kept me moving between small towns and remote communities in the Southwest. Nothing fancy, mostly logistics, supply runs, helping where help was needed. It put me in contact with people who lived close to the land, people who noticed things others didn't. I respected that. I thought respect was enough. Life felt steady then. I had routines. Early mornings, coffee before sunrise, the hum of tires on empty roads, evenings spent writing notes or sitting outside, letting the heat bleed out of the ground. There was a calm to it. A sense that if you worked hard and kept your head down, the world would leave you alone. That calm didn't break all at once. It thinned, slowly, like fog burning off in the wrong direction. There were small things at first. Conversations that stopped when I walked into a room. People choosing their words too carefully. Long looks toward the hills that didn't match the questions being asked. I noticed it, but I told myself it wasn't my place to push. Everyone carries their own worries. Then there was the elder. He was a man most people listened to, even when he spoke softly. He had a way of looking at you that made you feel seen, not judged, just measured. When he finally spoke to me directly, it wasn't sudden. It felt planned, like he'd been waiting for the right moment, or the right person. I remember the day clearly. The air was still, too still. No wind in the brush, no birds calling out. He asked me how long I planned to stay in the area. When I told him, he nodded, slow and thoughtful. Then he said something I didn't understand at the time. Some places remember what people do. I laughed it off, not because I thought he was joking, but because I didn't know how else to respond. He didn't smile back. Looking back, that was the moment everything tilted. Just a few degrees. Not enough to notice right away, but enough that nothing sat level after that. I didn't know then that he was deciding whether I was ready to see something, or that once you see it, you don't really leave it behind. You just learn how to carry it. And when he finally asked me to come with him, I didn't understand what I was agreeing to. I only knew that the land felt like it was holding its breath. Something about him made me uneasy long before he ever spoke to me. I grew up in a working family that didn't believe much in signs or stories. My father fixed engines. My mother worked long shifts and slept light. We were taught to solve problems with our hands and keep our thoughts to ourselves. If something couldn't be measured or repaired, it usually got ignored. That way of thinking followed me into adulthood. By the time I reached my late 20s, I was used to being the outsider who passed through. I didn't stay long enough to belong anywhere, but I stayed long enough to be trusted. People saw me as steady, reliable, someone who didn't ask too many questions. I thought that was a good thing. That's probably why the elder noticed me. In the communities I worked with, elders didn't waste words. When they spoke, it was because something mattered. Most of the time, I was invisible to them, and I was fine with that. But this man watched me in a quiet way that felt deliberate. His eyes followed patterns, not faces, like he was studying how people moved through space. I learned later that he'd known my family name long before I introduced myself. My grandfather had passed through the area decades earlier, working seasonal jobs, staying just long enough to leave footprints and then move on. He never talked about it. He never talked about much at all. When he died, we found notebooks full of half-written thoughts and places marked without explanation. At the time, I thought it was just an old man's habit. The elder knew better. When he finally sat beside me one evening, the sun was low and the land was cooling fast. He asked about my people, not where I lived, but where I came from. The question caught me off guard. I gave him the simple version. Names, jobs, places that didn't mean much to me anymore. He listened without interrupting. Then he nodded once. "That explains why you feel familiar to the land," he said. I remember the wind picking up right after that. A dry, cold breeze that moved through the brush like a warning. I told myself it was coincidence. I always did. Over the next few days, I noticed small things changing. Dogs stopped barking when I walked by. Birds lifted off early from trees. At night, the silence pressed in heavier than before. I slept poorly, waking up with the sense that someone had been standing just outside my line of sight. I didn't connect it to the elder. Not at first. Then he asked me to sit with him again. This time his voice was lower. Careful. He said my family had crossed paths with something a long time ago. Not directly, not enough to be remembered clearly, but enough to leave an impression. He said some places don't forget the people who pass through them, and some people carry those places with them whether they want to or not. I told him I didn't believe in that kind of thing. He didn't argue. He just looked past me, toward the hills, and said there was a reason he needed me to come with him, a reason he couldn't explain unless I saw it myself. That was the first time I felt it clearly, the sense that whatever waited out there already knew who I was. The farther we drove, the quieter everything became. The road narrowed until it was a little more than packed dirt cutting through open land. No signs, no fences, just low brush, scattered trees, and hills that looked worn down by time. The elder didn't speak much. His hands stayed steady on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead like he was following something only he could see. I tried to make small talk, asked how far we were going. He answered with a single word: "Enough." That should have been my first real warning. When we finally stopped, the engine noise felt too loud, like it didn't belong there. As soon as he shut it off, silence rushed in to fill the space. Not peaceful silence. Heavy silence. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you aware of your own breathing. The air smelled dry with something sharp underneath it, like old metal left in the sun. I stepped out and felt it right away. The ground felt wrong under my boots. Too firm, like it hadn't been disturbed in a long time, even though there were faint tracks nearby. Not clear footprints, more like the suggestion of them, pressed down and then smoothed over again. The elder stood still for a moment, listening. No wind, no insects, no birds. "This place doesn't like noise," he said quietly. We walked from the road toward a cluster of trees that grew too close together. As we moved, I kept getting the feeling that the distance behind us wasn't staying the same, like the space was stretching or folding in on itself. I turned a few times, half expecting to see someone standing where we'd been. There was nothing, just the road, already looking farther away than it should have been. I told myself I was tired, that the heat was getting to me. Then I saw movement, not clear, just a shape slipping between tree trunks. Too tall to be a deer, too smooth to be a person walking normally. It vanished the second I focused on it, leaving my heart beating harder than it should have been. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to sound foolish. The elder slowed his pace. "You saw it," he said, not looking at me. That stopped me cold. He raised a hand, signaling me to stay close. The trees closed in tighter here, their branches bent inward like they were listening. The light dimmed even though the sun was still high. Shadows pooled where they shouldn't, stretching in the wrong directions. I heard footsteps then, not ours. They came in short bursts, 3 steps, pause, 2 steps, pause. Always just off to the side, never straight behind us. My chest tightened as I realized they were matching our speed, adjusting when we adjusted. I whispered, "Is someone out here?" The elder didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low and careful. "Yes, but not the way you think." We reached a clearing, bare and open, like something had been scraped clean. The air felt colder there. I could smell that sharp, copper-like scent more strongly now. My skin prickled, every instinct telling me to leave. I turned to ask him what this place was. He finally looked at me then, eyes heavy with something close to regret. "This isn't where it hunts," he said. "This is where it remembers." He told me the danger of this place didn't begin with the Skinwalker. It began with humans, and whatever was here learned from us. I should have turned back the moment he said that. The clearing felt exposed, like standing in the center of something that had already decided where you belonged. I kept shifting my weight, listening to the soft crunch of dirt under my boots. The sound felt too loud. Every movement echoed longer than it should have. The elder moved slowly, careful where he placed his feet. I followed his steps without thinking, the way you do when you trust someone more than your own instincts. The air pressed against my skin, cool and dry, carrying that sharp copper smell that made the back of my throat tighten. Then I noticed the silence wasn't complete anymore. There was a low sound beneath it. Not constant, not rhythmic. Almost like breathing, but stretched thin. I stopped walking and the sound stopped with me. When I took another step, it returned. I told myself it was wind moving through brush I couldn't see. But there was no wind. The elder crouched near the edge of the clearing and pointed at the ground. At first I didn't see anything out of place, just dirt, small stones, dead grass pressed flat. Then my eyes adjusted. The marks weren't footprints. Not really. They were too long, too uneven. Like something had dragged its weight forward, then lifted, then dragged again. The pattern twisted, changing direction without reason. I felt my stomach tighten as I realized the marks circled the clearing, not once, but many times. "This happened recently," I said, though I didn't know how I knew. The elder nodded. "It comes back here when it's restless." A sharp snap sounded from the trees behind us. I spun around, heart racing, expecting to see a branch falling or an animal bolting away. There was nothing. Just the tree line, still and dark, shadows layered on shadows. Then I heard it again. 3 soft knocks. Wood on wood. They came from different directions, too spaced out to be natural. My mouth went dry. I tried to count my breaths, to slow myself down. Panic wouldn't help. That's what I told myself. The elder stood, eyes scanning the trees. "Don't answer it," he said, "not even with your body." I didn't understand what he meant until I felt it. The sense of being watched. Not like an animal watches. This felt patient, curious, like something was waiting to see how I'd react. I shifted my foot without thinking. The knocking stopped. A moment later, it started again, this time closer. I whispered, "Is it following us?" He shook his head slowly. "It's learning you." That was when I saw the last sign, just for a second. Between 2 trees, the shadows bent inward, stretching taller than the trunks themselves. The shape didn't step out. It didn't rush. It simply leaned forward, as if testing how much of itself it needed to show. My heart slammed against my ribs. Every part of me screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then the shape pulled back, and the forest went still again. Too still. The elder took a step forward and motioned for me to follow. His voice was steady, but quiet. "Now you've been noticed," he said. "That means we don't turn back." I looked once more at the clearing, at the marks circling it like a warning written into the earth. Something out there had acknowledged me, and it wasn't done. What would you have done in that moment? Kept going or walked away while you still could? Night came faster than I expected. The light didn't fade the way it normally does. It dropped. One moment the sky was dull orange, the next it was gray, then dark, like something had pulled a curtain across it. The elder finished setting up our small camp without a word. No fire, no lantern, just enough gear to sit and wait. That alone should have terrified me. We sat with our backs near a cluster of rocks, the ground cold beneath us. I could hear my own breathing too clearly, each inhale sounding louder than it should have. The forest didn't settle the way forests usually do at night. No insects warming up, no distant calls, just that thick, pressing quiet. Then I heard it, breathing. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel, slow, controlled. It came from somewhere beyond the trees, circling instead of approaching. I turned my head, trying to catch movement in the dark, but the shadows stayed layered and deep. The elder leaned closer and whispered, "Keep your eyes low." A branch snapped to our left. I flinched, my muscles tightening. The sound wasn't sharp like something breaking by accident. It was deliberate, twisted. Then came another snap on the opposite side. The timing felt wrong, like someone was testing how fast I could turn my head. Something moved behind us. I didn't see it clearly, just the sense of displacement, the way darkness shifted where it shouldn't. My skin prickled, every hair standing up. I wanted to speak, to ask what it was doing, but my throat locked tight. Then the whispering started. At first, it sounded like the wind slipping between rocks, soft and broken. I leaned in, straining to hear words that weren't there. That's when I realized the pattern was wrong. The sounds rose and fell like speech, not air. The elder's jaw tightened. "Don't listen," he murmured. The smell hit me next. Copper, stronger than before, mixed with something damp and old. It filled my nose and made my eyes water. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to gag. Something brushed the ground nearby. Slow, dragging steps, not heavy, but careful. I felt the vibration through the dirt before I heard it again, scratching. It came from beneath us, not directly under, but close enough that I could feel it through the soles of my boots. Long, patient lines being drawn into the earth, one after another. No rush. My heart hammered. I leaned toward the elder, barely moving my lips. "Is it trying to get in?" He didn't answer right away. The scratching stopped. For a few seconds, everything went completely still. Then a soft knock sounded against the rock behind us. Once, pause, twice, pause, 3 times. I froze. The knock came again, closer to my shoulder this time, like it was leaning in to see how I'd react. I could almost feel a presence hovering there, waiting. The elder finally spoke, his voice barely above breath. "It knows we're awake." That was when I understood something was very wrong. This wasn't random noise. This wasn't curiosity. Whatever was out there was doing this on purpose. I didn't sleep at all after that. The night stretched on, slow and heavy, like it didn't want to let go of us. My eyes burned from staying open, but every time I tried to close them, the sounds came back stronger. Breathing, shifting weight, the faint scrape of something moving just beyond where I could see. The elder stayed still, listening the way hunters do, not with fear, but with focus. That scared me more than panic would have. Just before dawn, the air changed. The copper smell grew thick, sharp enough to taste. It coated my tongue and made my stomach turn. I covered my mouth, trying not to gag. The elder noticed and leaned close. "It's closer now," he whispered. "It always comes closer before the light." The forest around us began to move. Not all at once, but in pieces. A shadow slid across the ground without a source. A tree line bent inward, then settled back into place. I caught a glimpse of something tall passing between 2 trunks, its movement wrong, like its joints didn't agree on how to bend. I sucked in a breath. Between the trees, I saw eyes. They weren't bright. They didn't glow the way movies make them glow. They reflected. Pale, wet reflections that caught the faint light of the sky and held it too long. They stayed low at first, then slowly rose, as if whatever owned them was standing up straighter. I couldn't look away. The elder murmured something under his breath, words I didn't understand. The eyes blinked, slowly, deliberately. Then the voice came. "Hey." It was soft, familiar. My shoulders tensed before my mind could catch up. That voice sounded like someone I knew, someone I trusted. I turned my head without thinking. The elder grabbed my sleeve, hard. "Don't answer," he hissed. The voice came again, closer this time. "You okay?" It was perfect. The tone, the pause between words, even the slight rasp at the end of the sentence. My pulse thundered in my ears as my mind raced through faces, memories, reasons why that voice shouldn't be here. A shape leaned forward from behind the trees. Not fully. Just enough. Its outline didn't hold still. Shoulders rose and fell like they were being adjusted. The head tilted at an angle that made my neck ache just watching it. The smell intensified, copper and damp earth mixing together. I felt tears prick my eyes, not from emotion, but from raw fear. This wasn't something pretending to be human, this was something practicing. The elder's grip tightened. "It learns by listening," he whispered, "and by watching reactions." The shape shifted again. I heard bones, or something like them, move under skin that didn't sit right. The eyes reflected us both now. Then the voice changed. It stopped sounding like someone I knew. It sounded like me. My breathing stuttered. My chest felt hollow, like all the air had been pulled out at once. "Why won't you look at me?" the voice said. It matched my cadence perfectly. My hesitation, even the slight catch I get when I'm afraid. I felt something inside me break loose. The elder leaned close and whispered words that froze my blood. "It knows you now," he said. "It knows your name." As if responding to him, the voice came one last time. Clear, calm, and unmistakable. It spoke my name. Morning didn't feel like relief. The light crept in thin and gray, like it didn't want to be there either. The moment the sky started to change, the sounds faded. The breathing stopped. The footsteps withdrew into the trees without a single snap of a branch. It was like whatever had been circling us simply stepped back and waited. I realized my hands were shaking. The elder stood slowly, joints stiff, eyes still scanning the forest. "It won't show itself in full daylight," he said. "But that doesn't mean it's gone." I nodded, though my head felt heavy, like I hadn't slept in days. My name still echoed in my ears. Hearing it spoken in my own voice had left something loose inside me, like a bolt rattling around that no longer fit. We moved deeper into the trees. The forest looked different in the morning. Not brighter, emptier. The ground was marked with old scars I hadn't noticed before. Shallow grooves in the dirt. Trees with bark peeled away in long strips, too high up to be animals. I reached out once, then pulled my hand back. The wood felt cold, even in the growing light. The elder stopped near a cluster of stones half buried in the soil. "This is where people stopped pretending," he said. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Then I saw it. Between the stones was a narrow opening, almost hidden by brush and shadow. It wasn't a cave exactly, more like a depression that led downward, the earth worn smooth by years of use. The air coming from it was cooler and stronger with that copper smell. I hesitated. "What is this place?" He didn't answer right away. He knelt and brushed away dirt with careful movements, revealing markings cut into the stone. Not symbols I recognized, not writing. More like tally marks, hundreds of them. Some deep and old, others newer, sharp-edged. "People came here to do things they didn't want remembered," he said quietly. "And the land remembered for them." A chill ran through me. As we stood there, I noticed something else. The ground around the opening was packed down hard, smoother than the rest of the forest floor. Like something heavy had stood there often, waiting, watching. I felt it again, that pressure between my shoulder blades, the sense of being observed. The elder straightened slowly. "It brings people here when it wants them to understand," he said. "Not what it is, what we are." I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like metal. Down inside the opening I could see shapes, not bodies, not bones laid out neatly, remains of objects, torn fabric, rusted tools, things that once belonged to people who never came back for them. Everything stripped of meaning, reduced to evidence. My stomach turned. I took a step back and heard a sound behind me. Soft, careful. A footstep matching mine. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I could feel it standing there, just beyond my sight, patient as ever. The elder's voice dropped to a whisper. "Now that you've seen this, he said. "It won't let you leave the same." I realized then that this place wasn't just hidden, it was being guarded, and whatever guarded it had decided I needed to be part of its memory. It stepped closer without making a sound. I didn't see it move at first. I felt it. The air behind me tightened, like pressure building before a storm. My skin prickled, every nerve lighting up at once. I stayed still, afraid that even breathing too loud would draw it nearer. The elder slowly raised one hand, palm down, signaling me not to turn around. "Don't face it yet," he whispered. "Let it decide how close." The smell hit me harder than before. Copper and wet earth, mixed with something sour and old. It filled my lungs and made my eyes sting. I heard a soft shift of weight behind me, followed by the faint sound of breathing that didn't match any rhythm I knew. Then I saw it, just barely. In the reflection of a dark stone near my feet, two eyes appeared. Not glowing, not shining, just catching the light wrong, like mirrors tilted at an angle they weren't meant to hold. They blinked once, slowly. My heart hammered so hard I was sure it could hear it. A shadow slid forward, stretching long across the ground. The shape didn't line up with anything behind it. The shoulders were too narrow, then too wide. The head sat slightly off-center, as if it hadn't settled into place correctly. It leaned in. I felt warm breath brush the back of my neck. My muscles locked. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. The elder murmured something low, steady, not quite words. The shadow paused, like it was listening. Then the voice came again. Not my voice this time. It sounded like the elder. "Look," it said softly. The tone was perfect. Calm, patient. Even the weight of the word felt right. My chest tightened as I realized how carefully it had learned him, how closely it had been watching. The elder stiffened beside me. "It's close enough," he said. The shadow shifted, pulling back just a little, enough for me to finally turn my head. I wish I hadn't. It stood between the trees, half hidden by branches, like it didn't want to be fully seen. Its limbs bent at wrong angles, correcting themselves as it moved. The skin, if that's what it was, looked stretched, uneven, catching the light in patches. Its eyes stayed fixed on me, unblinking. It didn't rush. It didn't threaten. It studied me. The smell grew stronger. The forest around us felt like it was holding its breath. Even the trees seemed tense, branches drawn inward. Then it took one slow step forward. The ground didn't crunch under its foot. It didn't leave a clear print. Just a shallow impression that smoothed itself out as soon as it lifted away. The elder placed a hand on my arm. His grip was firm, grounding. "Remember this," he said quietly. "It doesn't need to touch you to change you." The creature tilted its head, eyes narrowing slightly like it was pleased. Then it backed away, melting into the trees, its shape breaking apart into shadow and silence. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like minutes. The elder didn't relax. He only looked at me and said, "Now it knows how much you can endure." I understood then that this wasn't a warning meant to scare me. It was a test. If you were that close, close enough to smell it and hear it breathe, would you still stay, or would you run no matter the cost? I didn't feel relief after it disappeared. I felt exposed. The forest didn't return to normal once the creature slipped away. The silence stayed sharp, like glass just under the surface. Every sound felt delayed, as if the land itself was deciding whether it was allowed to make noise. We started moving again, slower now. Not because we were being careful, but because it felt like the ground wanted us to go a certain way. Paths opened where none had been before. Low brush bent aside just enough to pass through, then settled back behind us, hiding where we'd come from. I realized then that we weren't choosing the direction anymore. The elder noticed it too. His shoulders stayed tense, his eyes always shifting. "It's guiding," he said quietly. "That's worse than chasing." I asked him why. "Because it means it wants you somewhere," he answered. As we walked, I caught glimpses of movement off to the side. Not fast, not sneaking, just keeping pace. Sometimes I'd hear steps that matched mine exactly, heel to toe, just a half-second delayed. When I stopped, they stopped. Once I turned suddenly. Nothing was there, but the smell rushed in stronger than ever, like it had stepped back just in time. We passed more signs of the place's history the deeper we went. Old scraps of clothing snagged high in branches, tools half buried in the dirt, rusted beyond use, marks carved into trees, deep, angry lines that looked too deliberate to be animals. I felt like we were walking through a confession no one wanted spoken aloud. The elder finally stopped near a narrow ravine. The ground dropped away sharply, and the air rising from it was cold and damp. I could hear something below us. Not water. Something slower. A soft dragging sound that echoed and returned. My chest tightened. This is where it ends, isn't it? He looked at me, his face tired. This is where it wants you to understand. The shadows shifted behind us. I didn't hear it approach. I sensed it, like pressure against my back, like standing too close to a cliff edge. The air felt thick, heavy, pushing against my lungs. The voice came again, calm and measured. Look. Not a command, an invitation. I felt a strange pull then. Not fear, curiosity. A deep, wrong need to see what was being shown to me. The elder stiffened, his hand tightening on my arm. It's not asking, he said. It's reminding you. That's when it hit me. It wasn't hurting us like prey. It was leading us like witnesses. Twist number 3, after section 9. I finally understood. The Skinwalker wasn't hunting me. It needed me to see this place, so I would carry it forward. The ground beneath us shifted slightly, pebbles rolling down into the ravine. Something moved below, responding. The elder's voice dropped to a whisper. Once you see what's down there, he said, you don't get to pretend anymore. I stepped closer to the edge, my heart pounding, the smell of copper thick in the air. Whatever waited below was the reason for everything, and it was about to be revealed. The ravine swallowed sound. As I leaned closer, the world narrowed to that cold breath rising from below. The smell of copper was strongest here, thick enough to make my eyes water. I could hear movement now, slow steps scraping against stone, then stopping, like whatever was down there knew I was listening. The elder stayed beside me, steady but tense. This is where there's no more guessing, he said, only knowing. The shadows along the ravine wall shifted. Something climbed, not fast, not struggling. It moved with careful control, placing weight where it wanted, like gravity was optional. I watched a shape rise into view, pieced together by dim light and shadow. At first, it looked almost human, too human. Broad shoulders, long arms, a head tilted slightly forward. Then it adjusted. The shoulders rolled back, stretching wider than they should. The arms lengthened, joints bending in small corrections, like it was fixing mistakes as it went. The head turned too far, then eased back into place. I felt my stomach drop. It stepped onto the edge of the ravine without disturbing the loose stones. Its feet touched the ground, and for a brief moment I saw the impression they made. Long, uneven, wrong. The marks faded almost instantly, smoothing over like the earth didn't want to admit they were there. The elder inhaled sharply. There, he said. You see it now. The creature raised its head and looked at us. Its eyes caught the light and held it, not glowing, reflecting. They were set just a little too far apart, blinking out of sync. Its face tried to settle into something familiar but couldn't decide what it wanted to be. The mouth moved slightly, like it was remembering how to use it. Then it spoke. Not just one voice, several. They slipped over each other, rising and falling. Snippets of tone and rhythm that didn't belong together. I heard fear, anger, calm, pleading. All layered, all wrong. My knees went weak. That's how you know, the elder whispered. It doesn't have one shape, or one sound. The creature took a step forward. The air bent around it, like heat rising off pavement. The copper smell was overwhelming now, mixed with damp soil and something rotten beneath it. I could hear a faint clicking sound each time it moved, like bones shifting under skin that didn't fit. It lifted its head again and focused on me. My voice came out of its mouth, not distorted, not twisted, perfect. "I remember," it said, using my tone, my pauses. "You were here before." I shook my head, panic flooding in. "I've never—" The elder cut me off. "It remembers through people," he said, "through what they leave behind." The creature's form wavered, edges blurring as if it couldn't hold itself together much longer. For a moment I saw something else beneath the shape, something thin and stretched, like a shadow wearing skin. It stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could feel its presence pressing against my chest, heavy and cold. The elder spoke quietly, firmly. "Now you know what it is." The creature leaned forward, eyes fixed on mine, its shape finally settling into something unmistakable. A skinwalker, and it had chosen to be seen. It didn't rush us. That was the worst part. The skinwalker stood there, close enough that the space between us felt crowded, like the air itself had thickened. I could hear it breathing now, slow and steady, almost calm. Each breath carried that copper smell deeper into my lungs, until it felt like I was breathing the place itself. The elder stepped slightly in front of me, not blocking my view, but placing himself between me and whatever came next. His posture changed. He wasn't guiding anymore. He was bracing. "It's deciding," he said quietly. The creature's head tilted again, that familiar wrong angle, studying the elder now. Its shoulders shifted, bones rolling beneath its skin with a faint clicking sound. I realized then that it wasn't trapped in one shape. It was choosing one. It took another step closer. This time the ground reacted. The dirt darkened under its foot, as if soaked with something unseen. I felt pressure in my ears, like a sudden drop in elevation. My chest tightened, and my vision blurred at the edges. The voice changed again. "Why did you bring him?" it asked. It sounded like a woman this time. Older. Tired. The words were heavy with something like accusation. The elder didn't flinch. "Because he can carry it," he said. "And you know it." The skinwalker's gaze slid back to me. Its eyes narrowed, reflecting my shape back at me in pieces. I saw myself fractured in them. Fear, confusion, curiosity, all at once. It moved closer still. I couldn't step back. My legs felt weak, useless. I was aware of every small sound now, the faint hum in my ears, the soft scrape of its movement, the slow inhale of breath that didn't belong to a human body. Images pressed into my mind without warning. Hands digging into dirt. Voices raised in anger. People doing things they refused to name later. The ravine below us filled my thoughts, not as it was now, but as it had been. Crowded, loud, desperate. I gasped and stumbled forward a step. The skinwalker leaned in, its face inches from mine. Its skin rippled, struggling to hold together. For a split second I saw more than one face layered there, expressions frozen in fear, rage, and regret. "You see," it said, using my voice again, "you remember." "I wasn't there," I whispered. It shook its head slowly. "You were made of the same thing." The elder's hand gripped my shoulder hard. "That's enough," he said. The skinwalker paused. The forest seemed to lean in with it. Trees creaked softly. Shadows pooled deeper at their roots. Everything felt drawn toward that point, like gravity had shifted. Then the creature stepped back. Just one step, but the relief hit me like a wave. I sucked in a breath, nearly dizzy from it. The pressure eased slightly, though the fear stayed sharp. The skinwalker's form began to blur at the edges, its shape unraveling into shadow and movement. Before it faded completely, it looked at me one last time. "This doesn't end here," it said softly. "It never does." And then it was gone. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. The elder exhaled slowly and turned to me, his eyes heavy. "Now you know what it wants," he said. I swallowed hard. "What?" He looked toward the ravine, then back at me. "For you to live with it," he said, "the way it does." And I knew, deep down, that it wasn't finished closing in on me yet. I didn't realize how much I was holding inside until it finally cracked. Once the Skinwalker vanished, my legs gave out. I sat hard on the cold ground, my hands shaking so badly I had to press them into the dirt to steady myself. The smell lingered, copper and damp earth, clinging to my clothes like it had soaked through my skin. The elder stood over me for a long moment, saying nothing. The forest had begun to breathe again, soft creaks, distant rustling, but it felt wrong now, like a performance put on for my sake. "You can't unlearn what you saw," he said finally. I looked up at him. My head felt full and empty at the same time. "Then tell me," I said. "Tell me why it showed me all of that." He lowered himself onto a rock nearby, his movements slow, tired. "Because this place is honest," he said, "and honesty breaks people." He explained then, not with stories or myths, but with quiet facts. This land had been used, abused, and forgotten. People had come here to hide what they didn't want to face. Violence, betrayal, desperation. They left pieces of themselves behind, thinking the ground would bury it all. It didn't. "Some things don't rot away," he said. "They change." The Skinwalker wasn't born from nowhere. It wasn't some wild thing that wandered in. It was shaped by what humans poured into this place. Fear, cruelty, hunger for power. It learned from us. It copied us. It became a mirror no one wanted to look into. My chest tightened as the truth settled in. "That thing," I said slowly, "it's carrying us." The elder nodded. "And showing us when it chooses." I thought about the voices, the faces layered beneath its skin, the way it spoke with understanding instead of rage. My stomach turned as I realized something worse than fear was growing inside me. Guilt. "Why me?" I asked. "Why show me?" He met my eyes. "Because you'll remember," he said, "and because you won't be able to pretend it wasn't real." The forest shifted around us, branches swaying without wind. I felt watched again, not closely, not threateningly, but patiently, like something waiting to see what I'd do with what I'd been given. My breathing hitched. "What happens if people don't learn?" The elder looked away. "Then places like this keep making more of them." That was it. That was the breaking point. I pressed my palms into my eyes, fighting the urge to scream, to run, to forget. But forgetting wasn't an option anymore. The truth had weight. It pressed down on me, heavy and permanent. When I finally looked up again, the forest felt closer. Not hostile. Aware. The elder stood and offered me his hand. "We leave now," he said. But it doesn't. I took his hand and pulled myself up, my legs unsteady. Somewhere deep in the trees, something shifted. Slow. Deliberate. I knew then that this truth wasn't just about the past. It was about what people would keep doing, and what would keep answering. If you learned a truth like this, one that says the real monsters are human, would you try to forget it, or would you carry it with you? We didn't leave right away. That was the revelation I wasn't prepared for. The elder started walking, slow and steady, but after a few steps he stopped. I followed his gaze and felt my chest tighten. The forest ahead looked the same, but it felt sealed off, like a door that had quietly closed while we weren't looking. "It's not finished," he said. The air shifted again, not heavy like before, focused. The Skinwalker didn't appear all at once. It never did. First came the smell, then the pressure, then the sense that the space behind us had filled in without sound. I turned this time. It stood farther back, half hidden by trees, its shape less defined than before, not because it was weak, but because it didn't need to be solid anymore. It had already done what it came to do. The voice came softly, layered but calm. "You understand now." It wasn't a question. Images pushed into my mind again, but slower this time. Clearer. People leaving marks and walking away. telling themselves it didn't matter because no one saw, because no one spoke. The land absorbing it all, holding it, reshaping it. The Skinwalker stepped forward once, stopping at the edge of the trees. "We stay," it said. "You leave." I felt a strange twist in my chest. "You're guarding this place?" The shape tilted its head, thinking. Then it shook slowly. "Remembering," it said. "Waiting." "For what?" I asked. "For people to return," it replied, "or for others like you to carry it forward." The elder nodded quietly as if this confirmed something he'd always known. "It doesn't punish," he said to me. "It reflects. And reflection feels like cruelty to those who don't want to see." The Skinwalker's form shifted, thinning at the edges. I could see through parts of it now, tree trunks, shadows, empty space where a body should be. It was already withdrawing. Before it did, it spoke one last time. Not in my voice, not in the elder's, in many. "Don't make more of us." The words settled into me heavier than any threat could have. Then the pressure lifted. The smell faded. The forest loosened its grip, sound rushing back in like breath after being held too long. Birds called out, confused. Leaves rustled. Life resumed. I stood there, stunned, feeling like something essential had been placed inside me without my consent. The elder touched my shoulder. "That was the truth," he said. "Not about it. About us." We walked out in silence after that. The path opened again, brush parting like it always should have. But I knew better now. It wasn't letting us go because it couldn't stop us. It was letting us go because it trusted the weight we were carrying. As we reached the edge of the trees, I felt it one last time. Not watching, not following. Waiting. And I understood the revelation fully then. The Skinwalker didn't exist to hunt humans. It existed to remember them, and to make sure someone else did too. I thought leaving the forest would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The moment we crossed back onto open ground, something inside me snapped tight, like a wire pulled too far. The sky looked the same. The hills hadn't moved. But the world felt thinner, like a layer had been peeled away and never put back. We drove in silence for a long time. The elder kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady, but his jaw stayed clenched. I tried to focus on the rhythm of the tires, on the passing land, anything that felt normal. Nothing did. About halfway back, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just dust, a shimmer in the heat, but it moved when the truck moved. It paused when we paused. When the road curved, it curved with us. I didn't say anything right away. The copper smell drifted in through the vents, faint but unmistakable. My stomach tightened. I rubbed my hands together, trying to ground myself, but the sensation wouldn't fade. The elder spoke without looking at me. "You feel it?" I nodded. "It's not there," I said. "But it is." He exhaled slowly. "That's how it follows. Not with feet." The realization hit me hard. It didn't need to stay close anymore. It didn't need to hide in trees or ravines. It had done what it came to do. The rest was up to me. By the time we reached the edge of town, my head was pounding. Sounds felt too sharp. Voices too loud. I caught myself flinching when someone laughed nearby, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw reflections. Faces layered over mine, mouths moving without sound. I could hear knocking in the walls, slow and patient. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. When I finally looked toward the door, the sound stopped. Days passed, then weeks. I tried to go back to my routines. Work, driving, talking to people. But something was off. Animals watched me longer than they should have. Dogs whined when I walked past. Once I heard my own voice call my name from an empty room. I never answered. The climax didn't come with a scream or a chase. It came quietly one evening as I stood alone outside, watching the sun go down. The air cooled fast, and for just a moment the copper smell returned, strong enough to make my eyes sting. I felt it then. Not fear. Responsibility. The elder had been right. Surviving wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The Skinwalker didn't need to follow me physically. I was carrying the truth now. The memory. The weight. And memories, I realized, don't stay quiet on their own. As darkness settled, I heard a voice behind me. Not clear, not loud, just familiar enough to raise the hair on my arms. "You remember?" I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. The climax wasn't facing it again. The climax was understanding that it had never really let me go. It had simply stepped back and trusted me to finish what it started. I'm telling you this now because time doesn't make it fade. I thought it would. I thought years would smooth the edges, dull the memory, turn it into something distant and manageable. That's what happens with most things. But not this. This stayed sharp, quiet, patient. I'm older now. My hair is gray. My hands shake sometimes when I wake up at night. I live a life that looks normal from the outside. Job, home, neighbors who wave and don't ask questions. I learned early how to blend in again. But some nights, when the world goes still, I smell copper on the air. I don't go looking for it. I never did. It just shows up, faint, then stronger, usually when people start pretending too hard that nothing is wrong, when anger sits unspoken, when harm gets justified, when silence feels easier than truth. I hear knocking sometimes, 3 taps, a pause, then 3 more. It's never at the door. I've learned something since that day in the forest, something the elder never said out loud. Skinwalkers don't spread because they want to. They spread because we keep giving them something to grow from. They are made slowly, patiently, from the parts of us we refuse to face. They don't chase everyone. They wait for witnesses. I still see reflections that don't line up right, faces in glass that hold my gaze a second too long, movements in the corner of my vision that stop when I turn my head. I don't panic anymore. Panic feeds the wrong things. Instead, I remember. That's what it wanted. The elder passed away years ago. Before he did, he told me one last thing. He said the land doesn't need protecting from monsters. It needs protecting from forgetfulness, from people who believe they can walk away clean. He said some truths choose their carriers. I didn't understand what he meant until I realized I wasn't the last one. Every so often I meet someone who feels familiar to the land, someone who listens too closely, someone the silence leans toward. I don't warn them outright. I don't tell them stories. I just watch. Because if the land decides they need to see, they will. And once you see it, once you understand what skinwalkers really are, you don't get to call them legends anymore. You don't get to pretend they came from nowhere. They came from us. So if you ever find yourself somewhere quiet, somewhere the air feels heavy and the ground feels too still, pay attention to how the silence behaves. Listen to what it's asking of you. And if you ever smell copper where it doesn't belong, don't assume you're being hunted. You might be being remembered. Because the truth is, skinwalkers don't disappear. They wait. And they're still learning what we're willing to become.